All right. Just as Descartes does, I would like to begin the consideration of each new meditation with a recap of what occurred in the previous meditation. But I'll ask for your help in doing so. First of all, what is Descartes' express purpose in writing these meditations?
Find out what's real. Know for sure.
Okay, both are correct. I want to achieve certainty in the sciences, and certainly that involves knowing what is real as opposed to what only appears to be real. Okay? But if I were to state it very precisely and in the way that Descartes expresses his purpose, it is to establish a firm foundation upon which to build a system of knowledge. Okay? And in some sense, what Descartes does within the context of the meditations themselves is a system of knowledge. But taken as a whole, what Descartes is doing is establishing the first principles of knowledge, the principles that will make it possible to achieve knowledge in the other sciences. Okay? And we know from the title of the work that among these first principles, these foundational principles, are going to be the existence of God and the real distinction between the mind and the body. And what it means to say that there is a real distinction between mind and body, we'll wait until we arrive at that point. Okay. But the first task, of course, in discovering whether or not there is any proposition about which Descartes can be absolutely certain, is to test the beliefs he already holds, to see if any of them can withstand the most hyperbolic basis for doubt that he can conjure up. And this occurs in 3 phases throughout Meditation 1. What is the first possible basis for knowledge suggested by Descartes?
Universal senses.
The senses, right? And specifically, what I called remote sensory information. Okay? And it's easy enough for us to dismiss the information my senses provide at a distance or pertaining to what is very small, because they have deceived me many times regarding such things. Okay? So, using my senses to tell me about what is real but remote is dismissed on the basis of simple optical illusion. The senses are deceptive. However, he does recognize, as any reasonable person would, that there's a big difference between the information provided me by my senses about what is very distant as opposed to what is provided me about what is immediate. After all, it is only my senses that tell me that I stand here before a class, holding a piece of chalk, touching a chalkboard, that there is a table. that I have a body. So perhaps the senses can provide a stable foundation so long as they are restricted to what is immediate in his environment. But what is his basis for dismissing even that sort of information? The possibility that he is dreaming. And very important, it is not that he positively believes himself to be dreaming at the moment he is writing this, but he recognizes that he has had the experience of thinking himself awake only to awaken. And only by contrast, in retrospect, does he realize how dreamlike his dream was in comparison to the way things are when it's over. So if it is even remotely possible that you or I is actually still at home in bed and dreaming this, and at any moment will awaken and realize how nebulous in comparison this experience is to being awake, then we cannot completely dismiss the possibility that we are dreaming right now. Okay? Again, it would be a mistake to criticize Descartes on the basis of the improbability that I am dreaming, because all he needs is for it to be logically possible. And it is a logical possibility that I am dreaming and do not know it because it's happened before. There is precedent. So if I am dreaming right now, or perhaps let's take a more contemporary parallel sort of situation. Maybe I am hooked up to some sort of holographic image-making machine. And all of this is simply an image generated for my enjoyment. If so, it's not the case that I am touching a physical wall or feeling a physical hand, that there is a solid object before me, because it is all just images. Okay? So the senses are finished. They can't possibly be the basis for an absolutely certain foundation. But then he recognizes that there are certain ideas unaffected by this dream scenario. Like what? Yes. Mathematical propositions, for example, retain their authority whether I'm awake or asleep, because I cannot dream about a square circle. Whether I'm awake or asleep, 2 plus 3 equals 5. And likewise, the very simple ingredients of this experience, be it a dream or not, like shape, body, time, space, location, velocity, and the like seem of necessity to have some reality about them. Yet he finds a way to impugn even simple ideas. And what is that? The demon. Okay? And again, this basis for doubt is even more unlikely sounding than the last one. But it doesn't matter. Because if it is even possible, as remote a possibility as it may be, that some malevolent spiritual agency is manipulating my consciousness to make me believe that 2 plus 3 equals 5 when it does not. Or that there is such a thing as body when there is not. Then even mathematics cannot serve as an absolutely certain foundation for a system of knowledge. So at the end of the first meditation, we are in a state of skepticism. Okay? Which means what?
You're not sure. Yeah.
It means that knowledge is impossible. Skepticism is the view that knowledge, in the strict sense of the term, is not possible because there is always a basis for doubting that which I believe. Okay? And so he utters the words, perhaps the only certainty is that there is no certainty. Okay? And immediately raises the question about his own reality. Is it possible that I myself do not even exist? Perhaps I am a character in somebody else's dream. How do I know that I am at all? Is it possible that I don't exist? And what is his answer?
His thoughts exist.
Yeah. And therefore what?
His mind.
Yes. Because even if the entire content of his consciousness is false, consciousness must exist in order to be false. Even if there is a demon deceiving me about the simplest things, he cannot deceive me unless I exist in order to be deceived. And so he utters what is probably the most famous proposition in the history of philosophy: Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So long as I am thinking, regardless of what I am thinking, I must exist as a thinker. Because the attempt to doubt my own existence contradicts itself. Try it. I don't exist. Then who just said that? If it is possible for me to doubt, I must exist in order to doubt. So long as thinking is, there must be a thinker. Okay? So at least this, at the very moment that thinking occurs, that thinking exists, despite the content. I think, therefore I am. What am I? I am a thinking thing. Okay, and the Latin for thinking thing is res, which means thing, cogitans, which means thinking. The thing that thinks. And thus, because it is absolutely impossible for one to doubt one's own existence, because to doubt it affirms it. The thinking thing becomes the foundation upon which he will now attempt to build yet further bits of knowledge. Now, it may be that everything I think about is radically mistaken. At this point, I may as well assume that there is no earth. There are no stars, no sun, no moon, no other people. Perhaps I don't have a body. Perhaps there's no such thing as body. Perhaps I am nothing but spirituality, free-floating thought, just organized energy. But even the demon, should it exist, cannot bring it about that I am nothing, so long as I think that I am something, because the act of thinking guarantees that I must exist. Now, does it follow that if I am not thinking, I cease to exist? Not necessarily. Okay. All he's saying is that so long as he is thinking, he is guaranteed of his own existence as the kind of thing capable of thought. And included in the idea of thinking are all the modes of consciousness that he's been describing. What is a thinking thing? It is a thing which doubts, wonders, affirms, denies, senses. Even though I don't know if I have any sensory organs or if there is any object for me to sense, I'm still having the experience of sensation. The thinking thing imagines, it asks questions, it wonders, it feels. Yeah, all of this is included in awareness. So the I think, the cogito, is his absolutely certain foundation. It is beyond his capacity to doubt. Okay? Later on, we're going to be introduced to the idea of clear and distinct ideas, such that Descartes asserts whenever he clearly and distinctly understands something, that something must be true. And the only reason I bring that up at this point is that the I think, therefore I am is the standard for a clear and distinct idea. Okay? Again, later on, he's going to say, when I conceive an idea with this degree of clarity, so compelling that I can't find a basis for doubting it, then I must affirm it. Okay? And whether or not his subsequent assertions, like the existence of God, the existence of body, and the distinction between the mind and the body, live up to the standard or the bar set by the Cogito, is a question we must consider. Okay. So we're in the second meditation. And I know that the translation I've provided you uses a different title for this meditation, as it does for a number of them. Okay? And the translator simply does this to make it more accessible to you. But a more accurate translation of the title of Meditation 2 is of the mind, that it is better known than the body. Okay? What he is going to attempt to demonstrate in the second meditation is that his mind is better known than his idea of body. Now, why, you ask, does he even raise the question? Despite the fact that he has so carefully dismissed every other basis as a possible foundation for a system of knowledge, and the I think, therefore I am alone can withstand his hyperbolic doubt, he says that he still cannot shake the idea that what is really real is not this mysterious mind thing, but the physical bodies that he seems to be experiencing. Okay? Because if you ask me, all right, what is this thinking thing? All I can really say to you is, well, it is the thing that is responsible for my having conscious awareness of different sorts. But as I'm saying this, I am still compelled to believe in the existence of bodily things, even though I haven't been able to prove that they exist. Right? So at the very moment Descartes is saying, the only thing that I can know for certain at this point is that I exist as a thinker, he still has to get up and walk to the kitchen to get a glass of water It still hurts when he stubs his toe on something. And to simplify, he just cannot get over how compelling his idea of bodily things is. And so Descartes proposes to suspend the meditation for a moment. Let's just wait a minute and consider the idea of body. Okay? And by the idea of body, Descartes means material things. The idea he has of the desk, of the chair, of the earth, even of his own body. Anything which takes up space or is extended. As we will see, body is later defined as an extended thing, as opposed to mind, which is a thinking thing. Okay? So Descartes wants to take a moment out to consider his idea of the material world. In order to see what is so convincing about it. Why, despite my effort to dismiss any idea which could possibly be doubted, do I come back again and again to this notion that what is really well known is body and not this strange, elusive, thinking thing. Okay? So in order to consider his idea of body and what is contained in that idea, he takes a particular example for analysis. What is it? Right, a piece of wax. And Descartes says he has recently taken this wax from a beehive, okay? And he begins to describe it. The wax has certain properties. Like what?
Tastes like honey.
I'm sorry?
It tastes like honey.
Okay, it's got a taste.
Fragrance.
Yes. It's got a fragrance.
It's a texture. You can mold it.
Sure. Texture.
Makes a sound when you tap it.
Makes a sound if I knock on it. Okay?
A color.
It's got color. And in a word, he describes the wax in terms of all the properties given to his senses. Even though at this point Descartes doesn't know if he himself has a body or if there is any such thing as body, what he means by this piece of wax is the thing which possesses these characteristics or properties. And he calls these properties accidents. We'll see why he calls them accidental properties in just a moment. Okay? So here's the piece of wax. What does he do with it?
Lights it on fire.
He doesn't actually light it on fire. To my understanding, he draws it close to his fire. Okay, he's sitting near a fire hearth. Okay? And what happens as the wax approaches the fire. It begins to melt. And the taste goes away. The fragrance dissipates. The texture completely changes. No longer do I have a solid mass, I've got a puddle of wax. If I knock on this puddle, it doesn't make any sound, and the color has faded. In a word, all the properties by which I identified the wax just a moment before have now changed. But despite that, do I make the judgment that now I have an entirely different piece of wax? I do not. Rather, I say, it is the same piece of wax appearing differently. Do you understand? Okay.
Physical change.
It has undergone change, but something about it stays the same. Just in the same way that I can say to you, many things about me have changed over the years. My appearance, my thoughts, my behaviors, and yet I am the same person. Okay? The question becomes, how do I know that this is the same wax I had a moment before? Because if every property given to the senses by which I identified the thing as a piece of wax has now been replaced by another set of properties, on what basis do I make the judgment that something about it remains the same?
The essence of it is still there.
Okay.
Just in a different form.
All right. There is something essential about the wax that does not change. And the name Descartes gives to that is substance.
Like a composition of it, like what it's made of.
Chemical properties.
Maybe so. Okay? To put it in much more modern terms. But what he means by substance is that which can exist independently. Because the substance of the wax is independent of this particular set of accidents. Now you see why he calls them accidental. The wax does not need to have this particular color, taste, fragrance, texture, or sound. It can exhibit an entirely different set of properties and remain the same substance. So substance, as that which can exist independently of its accidents, is the thing that stays the same amidst changes. Do you follow me? Okay? Because I do not say that although all of the sensory properties of the wax have been replaced, I now have a different piece of wax. I judge myself to have the same piece of wax, simply exhibiting different appearances. Just in the same way that I say I am the same Michael Brzezinski I was when I was 10 years old, despite the fact that so much about me has changed. So if I run into you 20 years from now, and I recognize you, and you don't recognize me, but I say, hey, I'm Brzezinski, I taught philosophy to you 20 years ago, and you understand that even though you can't recognize me from my appearance any longer, it makes sense that I'm the same guy. Then you understand the difference between substance and accident. Okay? Accidents must inhere in a substance. They depend upon it. Because I cannot have free-floating color. If you do see color just in the air, you realize that there are particles being illuminated that are of a certain color. Taste and color and fragrance, texture, sound, and other such properties require a substance in which to reside. But the substance does not, likewise, require this particular set of accidents. Okay? So, accidents depend upon the substance, but the substance does not depend upon the accidents. And, yes?
Would it be correct to say that accidents are produced by the senses?
It would be fair to say, as we will see later on when we consider the empiricist tradition, that the accidents are perhaps the result of an interaction between something given by the wax and my sensory organs. Because after all, a thing may look to me to be a certain color, but to you a different color. Let's say that one of us is colorblind. Okay? So yes, it would be fair to say what you have said. And what makes it fair to say that these accidental properties are not what I mean by the wax itself or the substance of the wax is that the wax never really was its color or shape or texture or fragrance. What the wax really is a material substance. And the material substance is that which remains the same throughout changes to its appearance. Now remember, he doesn't at this point know whether there is such a thing as material. He's still just referring to this thing as an idea, something he is experiencing. But he cannot yet say that what he experiences is caused by a real thing out there in the world. It could simply be concocted by his own mind or created by the demon. Okay? But what's very important here is the distinction between substance and accident. The reality of body, if body exists, is its substance. The appearance of body, if it exists, consists of its accidents. The wax is really the material substance we call wax. which reveals itself under a certain appearance. Okay? But here now is the point of the whole illustration. If every single property by which I identified the wax before I melted it has been replaced by another property, can I know that this is the same substance that I had before based on my senses?
No.
No, because everything given to the senses has changed. If I needed to rely exclusively on my sensory perception, I would have to conclude that I have a different piece of wax. But if it is not my senses that informs me that the substance of the wax remains the same, then what does tell me?
Mind.
My mind, my intellect. I do not see that it is the same piece of wax. I know that it is the same piece of wax. So what is real about bodies, if they exist, is something that depends upon mind. My knowledge of the reality of body depends upon the mind. And so he concludes that indeed, mind is better known than body. Because what he knows of body, namely that it is a substance, should it turn out to exist, affirms the primacy of mind. Because in the absence of intellect, the reality of body would remain unknown. So even though I am obviously vulnerable to the appearance that what is really real about this world is its physical characteristics, if I think carefully, I realize that my mind is more real than body, or better known anyway. Okay? I shouldn't say that body is more real, that mind is more real, because later on he is going to assert that in fact body is also real, but consists of a different kind of reality than mind. Mind, as we've said, is a thing that thinks. Body is also a thing, not which thinks, but which is extended or takes up space. The res extensa. The thing which is extended is body, material. The thing which thinks is mind. Mind is a mental substance. Body is a material substance. But because the reality of a material substance presupposes the mind in order to be known, then what I must first know is mind. And through the knowledge of my own mind, which is my consciousness, I infer the existence of body. So mind is better known than body, even though it seems that the opposite is the case. And so in this, you see how he sounds like Plato. The realm of the intelligible, the realm of ideas, is more real. The proper object of knowledge than the physical world, which is just a reflection. Now, Descartes doesn't go that far. Remember, for Plato, the visible or physical realm is a reflection of the intelligible realm of forms and could not exist without the forms. A shadow can't exist without the thing which casts it. But Descartes is literally a metaphysical dualist, because by the end of the Meditations, he will assert that mind is one kind of substance, whereas body is an entirely different kind of substance, which is equally real, but separate. And that's what it means to be a substance. And remember, this is one of the two major things he seeks to establish here. One is the existence of God. The other is the real distinction between mind and body. But at this point, he only knows that mind exists. Even though he has established that there is a difference between the substance of a thing and its accidents, where the substance constitutes the reality of something, and the accidents constitute only the appearance of something, he still doesn't know if any material substance actually exists. It could just be an idea. All right? So it remains for him to show that material substance exists, that there is a material world. And that's what he's got on his mind as he moves into the third meditation. But he realizes that as long as it remains possible that there is a demon who could be the author of Descartes' idea of body, he will remain unable to establish that body exists. And so, as soon as it is possible, Descartes needs to eliminate the possibility of the evil genius. Okay? All right. So we move into the third meditation. Let me take a moment, though, just to make sure you understand the idea of substance and accident. Remember, substance is that which remains the same throughout changes to appearance. Okay. So if we go back to Plato, what is actually substantial? The forms, the good, because nothing in the visible realm ever stays the same. Okay? And just as the wax can change its appearance and remain the same thing that it was, as a mental substance, I can change my mind, but not thereby become a different person. Just because my thoughts change doesn't mean that my mind changes. In other words, I can change my mind without literally changing my mind, taking one out and putting another in.
Like your thoughts are to your mind as accidents are to substance?
Yes. I think that's a very fair way to put it. That the particular thoughts which I happen to have at any given moment are accidental. Because although I'm looking at a blue chair, I don't need to be looking at this blue chair in order to remain the same entity I am right now. Okay? When I change my mind or move from one idea to another idea, I remain the same mental substance in possession of those various ideas. I'm the common denominator. So what the accidents were to the substance of the wax, my various thoughts are to the substance which my mind is. Okay. All right. So we're in the third meditation. And this is where Descartes introduces the notion of clear and distinct ideas. Okay? And he arrives at it like this. What does he know so far? Really, all he knows so far is that he himself exists as a thinking thing, that the thinking thing is a mental substance, that the mental substance or mind is what is really well known and better known than any material substance, should such a substance exist. But he still does not know if there are any other people in the world, or if there is any such thing as body, okay? Or if God exists, or if mathematics is reliable. Okay? However, as he considers the fact that he does know that he himself exists, and that mind is better known than body, it follows that there is something else he must know. If I say I know X, whatever X is, I know that mind exists, or I know that 2 plus 3 equals 5. What must I also know?
That you have the ability to.
Yes. Or what it means to know something. If I say I know that I am a thinking thing, that implies that I also know what it means to know something. Or at least that I have an idea of what conditions must be satisfied in order for some idea to count as a piece of knowledge. So Descartes asks, what do I mean when I say I know something? And his answer is that an idea is so clear and distinct that I can't doubt it. Now, your translator goes into a rather lengthy discussion of the translation of clear and distinct, clarus and distinctus, okay? And he points out that even though he has followed suit with the rest of the translations of the Meditations by using clear and distinct, what Descartes actually means by clear is something like forceful. Like when I look at this chair, it is a forceful impression. It imposes itself on my consciousness. Okay? It is very present to my mind. And by distinct, Descartes means different than any other idea, easily distinguished from other ideas. Okay? So, the idea is this. When I have an idea which is so clear and distinct that it defies my ability to doubt it, then that will qualify as knowledge. So his criteria for knowledge are clarity and distinctness. Okay? And remember what I pointed out at the beginning, that the standard for a clear and distinct idea is the cogito. I see so clearly and distinctly that from the fact that I think, it follows I must exist, that I cannot possibly doubt it. So when any idea presents itself with this degree of clarity and distinctness, then it deserves the stamp of approval as a piece of knowledge. And I think we ought to be very critical of Descartes here and ask, as he builds upon his foundation, whether or not the subsequent bits of knowledge which he accepts really meet this standard. And I will submit to you that they do not. That nothing that Descartes says from this point forward is anywhere near as compelling as the cogito ergo sum. Okay? Now, I may be wrong about my interpretation of clarity and distinctness, meaning being beyond his capacity for doubt. But I don't know what else really he could mean by it. Because if it's possible for him to provide a basis for doubting some idea, it obviously isn't a clear and distinct one. Okay, yes?
Is it because his ideas get more abstract as the meditation goes on, or?
It is because I would say that the only thing of which he is immediately aware is his own consciousness. And everything else which he will assert to be real is reached by inference from one of those ideas belonging to his consciousness. Okay?
But he doesn't like protest that it's right. He just says that that's what he thinks it is.
Profess?
Maybe that's not the right word.
I think he does that with God, huh? Because everything.
Well, remember, yeah, he is going. I mean, I can tell you, there's no reason in leaving you in suspense. He's going to eventually say, yes, the world is made up of material things, and these material things are basically the way that we conceive them to be, okay? And God does exist, and in fact, it is only because I know that God exists that I know I can trust my clear and distinct ideas, okay? But again, the only thing which is immediate or immediately present is his own ideas. And in fact, he has probably gone too far already by saying that from the fact that he thinks, it follows that he is a thinking thing. Because the thing part is sort of slipped in there. Perhaps he should have said strictly that so long as I am thinking, thinking is. But that does not necessarily guarantee that there is a thing doing the thinking. Okay? Remember, this is typical faculty talk of the 17th century. If some phenomenon is possible, there must be an entity responsible for it, that which makes it possible. So, because vision is, there must be the eye which does it. Because hearing is, there must be the ear which does it. Likewise, because thinking is, there must be a mind which does it. Okay? But I don't think he's entitled to that conclusion. And we'll see why as we move along, especially later in the semester. Okay, so he employs this general rule that whenever some idea is clear and distinct, it will count as knowledge. All right? And in order for him now to gain yet other pieces of knowledge, he returns to his ideas. Where else can he go? Because that's all he knows to be real at this point. The content of his own mind. Okay? And he realizes that although he can classify the different sorts of ideas which he has, like some of the ideas belonging to his mind are properly called ideas, like the idea of a chair or the idea of a tree. Other cognitions which he has are volitions or desires. Okay? But he recognizes this. That no matter what the cause of his various ideas is, whether his idea of the table is actually being caused by a physical table, or if it is an evil genius just giving him the impression of a table, or God is sending him the idea of a table for some reason, or perhaps his own mind is producing the idea of the table. Okay? He realizes at least this much. Whatever is causing him to have these ideas must possess enough power or reality to bring them about. In other words, if every event has a cause, and I think Descartes will take that principle as clear and distinct, okay, then whatever be the cause of his ideas, and in particular his idea of body, that cause must possess enough power or reality to bring that idea about. Because what is more cannot come from what is less. To put it differently, an effect cannot surpass the reality of its own cause. Okay? For example, if I have an empty 12-ounce glass and a pitcher of water of unknown volume, and I start pouring the water into the glass and successfully fill the glass to the top, I know what about how much water I began with?
It was more than that.
Yeah, it was at least 12 ounces. Okay? A plant can give forth vegetation, right? Leaf, stem, but it is not someday going to generate an animal at the end of one of its stems, because it doesn't possess that degree of reality. Just like Plato might say, a physical object is more real than the shadow it casts, because the shadow cannot give rise to a physical object, but the physical object can give rise to the shadow. Why? Because the shadow does not possess enough reality to beget a physical object, whereas the physical object does possess enough reality to give forth a shadow. Okay? And let's call this principle in general the principle of efficient causality. If every event has a cause, then the cause of any effect must have at least as much reality as the effect of that same cause. What is more can't come from what is less. An effect cannot surpass the reality of its own cause. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. So now the question becomes, what is the origin of his idea of the physical world. But this principle doesn't yet help him because he realizes that certainly if God created his mind, God also possesses enough reality to create the ideas that fill his mind, including the idea of body. Oh, but wait. He realizes that this principle, that a cause must possess at least as much reality as its own effect, can be used to demonstrate the existence of God.
Is he saying the physical world is an effect and he's trying to find the cause?
He certainly is, yes, because he wants to know if his idea of the physical table can in any way guarantee that a physical table actually exists. Okay? Now, he's not there yet, but consider this. Let's think about the idea of God and employ this principle. Descartes says, I have an idea of God. Okay? And just like St. Anselm would say, if you understand what I mean by the word God, then you've got the idea of God too. And by the word God, I mean an infinitely perfect being. A being that is omniscient. What does that mean? All-knowing. Omnipotent. All-powerful. Supremely benevolent.
All good.
Right?
Like a being.
A being, yes. Omnipresent, or everywhere, eternal, and in a word, perfect in every possible way. His idea of God is the idea of a being that admits of no deficiency whatsoever. Pure perfection. All in all. Alpha and Omega. Okay? The question becomes, where did he get this idea?
He presumes that he gets it from God, right? So
Well,
that's random. Think about
is
it.
there any other alternative? Because Descartes knows that he himself is a finite mind. There are many things I don't know. But he is in possession of an infinite idea.
That can only come from the infinite being.
That's right.
If it's a demon.
The demon is not a perfect being because deception is a moral imperfection. And so if it follows that what is more can't come from what is less, and that the cause of any effect must possess at least as much reality as the effect of that same cause, then the only possible explanation for a finite mind being in possession of an infinite idea is that the cause of that idea must itself be infinite. Therefore, an infinite being must exist in order to have placed that idea in him. Therefore, God must exist. And just like an artist will paint and sign the painting with his signature, when God creates Descartes' mind, it's as if he signs his creation by instilling in it an idea of himself. This is Descartes' proof for the existence of God from the principle of efficient causality. Okay? And we'll review it next time, but this brings us to the close of the third meditation. Okay? Okay. Can you give me a second to take your attendance?
Causality